Hello everybody, welcome back to the fourth and final part of this series here on PokerVIP. My name is, once again, Spraggy. Excuse me. And we are playing, once again, against the man himself, VIP1 on TonyBet. It is Jon from PokerVIP. For those of you who've been following along with this series, you will know that the idea is we play against each other. Jon records from his perspective, I record from mine, and we discuss the hands that get played. Of course, we start off playing heads up, but usually the table will eventually fill. Sometimes with PokerVIP members, sometimes not. So let's see what we can get going today. We had a couple of interesting hands last session, including myself calling a river bet and a 4-bet pot with ace high against Jon's bluff. We stacked off pretty deep with nines against Jon, which, looking back, was really definitely very thin. But I think I can still get behind it. So we'll see how the games go today. Looks like we're going to be joined pretty early here by two players playing from mobile. So on the left-hand side, not going to be much room for heads up. We check-raise Jon on the left. He check-raises us on the right. I've gone for a smaller sizing here on the dry board. Jon's gone for a bigger one on the slightly wetter texture. We're going to fold Queen 10. Once we get 3-bet here, we're going to fold. Again, this check-raise, we don't really represent too many hands for value. But we're just aiming to fold out a lot of his stabs with our gut shot. We could certainly call there. Actually, we have two overs to the 2 and the 4. So our 5 and our 6 outs are slightly more viable. I think early doors here, we're just going to call with the 2 and flop a set. Oh, that works perfectly. So on this board, I think we're likely going to go for a check raise. I think Jon's going to see that more often than not. But he chooses not to. We will lead the turn now. When a player joins on a mobile device, not in for the full 10 euros, I mean, I know nothing about Menager, but I would assume perhaps a recreational if he's playing, say, on his phone with less than a full stack, but we'll see. And we've got a guy here on his phone as well who's posted without waiting for the big blind. So maybe we've got two recreationals. I don't know. If you guys are PokerVIP members, please forgive me. I know nothing of your work. I'm just making wild assumptions. We're going to call here on the button, play in position with a reasonable hand. And on the right-hand side against Jon, heads up, we're going to float. We got the backdoor ace of hearts. I think this is once again, a reasonable decision. I will just fold now to Jon's squeeze. Let's not get too into it too early. I think Queen Jack would be very optimistic indeed, even against Jon's aggression. So once again, like I say, for those who've been following this series, you'll see us play a lot of interesting pots, hopefully, in this 30 minutes against Jon. And if you want his perspective on the hands, you can go over to his version of the video. For every version I put out, there's a version made by him from his perspective where he's talking through exactly the same hands. So effectively, you get two videos in one, right? You get 30 minutes of me playing this table and 30 minutes of Jon playing this table. So do check out Jon's side of the series. I don't think we want to bluff this turn. I expect Jon to bet a lot of air on the Queen 6-6. So when he checks back, I think he's got a lot of ace highs, maybe even some pairs. We don't really have any equity. If the turn was an 8, a jack, a spade, a 7, we might take a stab. But I think the 4 of diamonds will just fold our 10 high. Jon putting on the straddle here on TonyBet, which I did not know was a feature, but I do now. We are going to raise the straddle. Could definitely induce some wilder action here, should we say, if Jon chooses to defend a straddle. Now, we did stack off with 9s before, and I said that it was definitely close, bordering on thin, but this is a little bit different. We've got a straddle. We're only 100 big blinds deep. We've only raised here, so this is like a 3-bet, I guess. So I think we have to shove once again, and if we run into it once again, then that's unfortunate, but I definitely think we want to be moving all in here. And as we see, Jon definitely capable of having a decent amount of bluffs in that spot, and we do manage to get him to fold, which I think is way better for us than calling with the 9s. It's not a hand that wants to see flops. Almost always we're going to have overs on the flop, and it's going to be very tricky for us to navigate post-flop. So I think the best play would just be to, as we did, go all in pre there. With the 3s, we're really playing for set value here, multi-way, and we don't flop one very, very connected board. We're out of the way there, as our two mobile players dance with each other. Right-hand side, just going to fold the Queen 6 to 3-bet. Jon's putting quite a few 3-bets quite early here. Seems to be definitely had his Weetabix this morning. Definitely seems to be playing pretty aggressively. So we'll see what we can do to combat that. going to be a call to the bet here. I think we want to check most of our range on this card. If we had an ace, we'd want to check. It's a really good card for Jon's range when he checks behind. So I think we should check with an 8. Jon stabbed this spot last time when we check folded the 10-9 suited, a very similar situation. So I think we're now going to go for a check raise. Actually, those spots aren't too similar, but I still think we're going to go for a check raise here. And we can certainly mix in some bluffs here. Things like 9-10 would be a reasonable check raise, I think. This is a fantastic river. I really don't represent anything at this point. I'm actually going to check, because once Jon bet calls the turn, I think he's either got an ace that has checked back the flop, or he's got some sort of draw. I think he's always trying to value bet an ace, and I think he can definitely make a bluff with one of his misdraws, assuming that I have a misdraw and he's just trying to get me to fold it. Would Jon be capable of folding an ace if I hit all in? And I genuinely think that he would be. But he's definitely not going to fold for like 430, 440, somewhere around here. Folding the 2s to his 3-bet on the left. And my software's frozen. Oh. A little bit of a nearly lagged out of the old quads there, but we managed to get our raise through. I mean, it's a spot where it's very, very hard for me to bluff, since like I'm never going to try and bluff him off an ace. But I just wonder, given the aggressive dynamic we've had over this 4-part series, whether he can ever fold an ace. I doubt he can. Apparently we're having some connection issues. I think we're okay. I think Jon's just deep into the time bank, right? We're going to put on the squeeze with the king jack. I think this is better. We're back to normal. Okay. And he does fold. So, you guys now have the opportunity to go and check out, pause this video, go and check out part 4 of from Jon's perspective. And obviously I don't know yet, but you guys can check out. If he folded an ace there, I'm going to feel very sad indeed. Very sad indeed. Okay, we 3-bet the king jack. Jon defends. We flop an open-ended straight draw. I think we're going to go for a c-bet. We see a small raise. I'm not convinced we have too much fold equity here. As in, I don't think if we shove, Jon's going to fold too often. But we do have a lot of raw equity. We have 9 or an ace for the nuts. Maybe our king is live. I don't anticipate him having too many pure bluffs in this spot just because it's such a connected board. So I think we're going to call in position and play turns, since we're getting a very, very good price to do so. Now Jon checks. This is a sort of texture where I feel like if he has any decent hand, he's going to want to bet to protect it. And I think his check raise was pretty small. But if he has a hand like Queen 10 that wants to check raise here, that he'd want to bet to protect. So I really don't feel like he has anything. We can get him off his nothing at the river though. So I think we're going to check back, try and realize a little more equity, but potentially make a bluff on the river. Now, I would assume that if Jon turned spades here with some sort of semi-bluff on the flop, that he would barrel the turn with his spade draw. So I'm not going to put too many flushes in his range. I would want my bluff at this point to have a spade in it. If Jon checked, I think we'd want to block a spade, just on the rare occasion that he does make a flush. More so if he bets, we want to block a spade, 'cause it's kind of unlikely he would check a flush at the river. Obviously, once he goes all in, we have king high. There's probably not too much room to do anything. I'm pretty surprised that he's able to shove here. I'm really intrigued, again, as to what sort of hands he'd be able to shove here. I mean, maybe he does have some spades that check raised and then didn't barrel. but there's not really too much we can do with the king jack off. Wouldn't be surprised to see a bluff. I'm not entirely convinced by that one. It's possible he had a blocker to the spade, just a single blocker to the spade, and goes for it. But a fairly interesting hand. I don't think we can do anything with the king jack. So we've got to think about hands that we would call, things that we would check back the turn with and then call. I think we would pot control kings, aces, ace, queen, king, queen on the turn, all of which would probably bet the flop against Jon and call the min raise. And then our river calling range would probably just be those hands that included a spade blocker, I would guess, so that we do block some of the spades that he may get to the river with. So yeah, I think that would be my calling range. Like kings, we would check back turn. Aces, we would check back turn. Ace, queen, king, queen, we would check back turn. And if we blocked the spade, we would go for the hero call. We'll open him. And I think it would be a hero call at that point, since he wouldn't be jamming worse than those hands for value. So we're only beating his bluffs. But I think that would be how I would approach the river in that situation. This is a really, really awkward, terrible board. Good card for my range, though. I think probably too good of a card for my range. I mean, this is a pretty wide bluff, given we just have absolutely no equity. But I think Jon's calling range in the big blind is going to be pretty wide. Oh, sorry, my phone's ringing. I think his range is going to be wide enough in the big blind that we can just get... my bad, I expect that was very loud on the video as well. That we can just get a decent amount of folds. At this point, we're obviously just completely done with the hand. We would have Jack X in our range there that would check behind, so we don't need to really think about that one too much. It was probably a little bit of an optimistic bluff, but I thought maybe we could take advantage of the fact that Jon was just check folding there too much. But clearly, that is not the case, as he hits us with the check raise. Jon seems to think that he's got the better of us in this video series. I'm not convinced. I mean, we did stack off yesterday with the nines for 15 euro for 150 big blinds. But as I said previously in that video, I think that was more or less a cooler. We did manage to call him yesterday with ace high and a 4-bet pot. It's certainly been interesting playing against Jon, who I really don't know too much about him, other than we've been splashing around in the OPL events together and we've had some fun hands there, but I don't think that's really a fair reflection of how either of us would play in a regular cash game environment. So we're really going off the dynamic that we've created over this 4-part series, and there's definitely been a lot of spots that would never play out in a regular game against regular opponents, but they are because Jon and I are sort of trying to outdo each other a little bit. Obviously, we're both making videos, and also there's that sort of leveling war going on where we make overbets that we wouldn't normally make, we make bluffs we wouldn't normally make, and I'm sure we're making calls we wouldn't normally make. But like I said, it's been good fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. We're going to defend the Queen 7 of diamonds. We could go for a check raise here on the Ace 9-2 rainbow. It's a pretty dry board. I think we'll see a flop with Queen 4 of diamonds here as well. It's a pretty dry board. We don't rep too much, but again, it's just a case of getting him to fold his stabs. We do have backdoors. Backdoor diamond draw. I think we'll just go with it. I think you can get away with a decent amount of raises on flops against your opponents in these games. People don't tend to defend too wide. For example, if he does c-bet like Jack 10 here, I don't think we're ever getting peeled. He's just going to have an ace the vast majority of the time. So we're just going to give up once we get called. Left-hand side, we call 1 with a 4. And we'll just give up on the turn. Maybe a little bit thin to call flop, but he can certainly stab and c-bet pretty wide, especially... As I said, I think potentially a recreational player here on the left. We'll go for a steal with the 6-8 suited. I think we're going to 3-bet from the small blind against Jon. He's certainly capable of calling us pretty wide from the button. I think Queen Jack is a hand we'd want to 3-bet from a small blind. We do see another 4-bet. He's really going for it today. We will fold this combo. I think our 4-betting strategy against Jon would just be to depolarize as we have, and just start 5-betting rather wider for value. So hands like Ace Queen that we typically wouldn't 5-bet all in with, pocket nines we wouldn't typically 5-bet all in with, but those are the hands, 9s and 10s, obviously jacks, and ace queen, I think we would just 5-bet over the 4-bets with. Going for the raise with the 8-7. It's not gone particularly well for us today, but only halfway through the video. We still have 15 minutes to make things work. A little bit of a wide open. I'm not sure I like it, especially given Jon's high 3-bet frequency. I think we should probably not open king 5 offsuit. We should probably start somewhere about king 8 offsuit. Mistakes were made. 2-3 suited, we can defend in position for a min open. 3x is a little bit rough. Yeah, we'll just fold. We could certainly choose a 3-bet here some of the time. But again, against Jon, with him just defending so much and just 4-betting us so much, I think we should depolarize our range and just go wider for value in all our spots rather than include too many pure bluffs like the 2 and the 3. We get 3-bet again by Djokovic. And yet again, we're going to have to fold. We might want to tighten our ranges everywhere on this right-hand table just because we're getting 3-bet and 4-bet almost every hand. Left-hand side, we get a raise and a 3-bet. We're getting out of the way with the king 6. We're going to start trying to go for a 3x open here. Just give him less incentive to 3-bet us. I guess we give him more incentive to 3-bet us, but I think to a min open, it's very easy to play back at. Obviously, we give him a little more incentive when we 3x open because he's going to win more when he does 3-bet bluff. But I think in general, he's just going to feel like it's easier to 3-bet when we make it a min open. We're going to call here on the button with a king 9 of hearts. And most likely float the flop with a backdoor heart draw, king high, backdoor straight draw. Our opponent checks. I think we're going to check behind. I don't anticipate a fold from ace high. Maybe we bet, actually. I think we're going to take a bet. I think he's going to play pretty face up on this board. I would anticipate him betting all of his overpairs, most of his 10x. So his range is kind of capped when he checks, I think. This is not a good turn for us to barrel. Unless we think our opponent's hand is really, really face up. So we will check behind. We really wanted to turn, if we turn any equity at all, I think this really sucks because I just feel like we're losing to ace high here. We're going to c-bet ace king in a 3-bet pot against Jon. I mean, I don't think there's a lot we can do. I don't think our opponent's folding any pair or ace high at this point, so we're just going to have to check behind. And we do lose to the pocket 2s, which is a little bit disappointing. But if we turn any equity there, if we turn like a 9, a king, obviously we win. We turn a heart, we barrel. We turn a jack or a queen, we would bet. Jon raises pretty big here. So he's repping king, queen for value. And then a lot of bluffs and semi-bluffs like jack 10 and ace jack of hearts and flush draws. I don't think we can fold our top pair, top kicker in a 3-bet pot against Jon. And I think there are a lot of bad turns that we should just be really looking to play for stacks right now. If he's got king queen, he's got king queen. I think there's just too many draws out there for us to bet fold ace king here in a 3-bet pot, especially given the dynamic. And he has 9-4 of hearts. We're running it twice. We're timing out over here. He wins one. Unfortunately, I timed out a top pair, top kicker over here. And we win the second. So I'm not a huge fan of his defend out of position with 9-4 of hearts. I think it's a hand that's going to be very, very unplayable. And I think his raise on the flop is pretty transparent. But I don't think there's a lot else he can do on the flop. He probably can get some of my hands to fold if I'm c-betting. Things like ace-jack. He can probably get some folds from me. I don't think I would c-bet a queen. But yeah, once he sees the flop, he's probably okay just to check raise, get it in. With that said, I think calling out a position pre-flop with 9-4 of hearts is going to be a disaster. And I think Jon probably knows that, obviously. But I think he's likely doing it. Since it's the final time we shall go to war, this is the final part of the series, he probably wants to get involved in some pots with me. And was lucky enough to win one of the runs. I guess he has reasonable equity against my hand. But yeah, Don't recommend defending the 3-bet out of position with 9-4 suited. So what does that mean? What adjustments would we make to that if we saw that in a game, or as we've just seen it in a game? And it goes back to what I said previously in the video about depolarizing our range. We don't want to have pure bluffs against Jon because he's just calling so wide and he's 4-betting us so much. So our range, really, we should move away from 3-betting hands like 6-3 suited and 5-2 suited and Queen-2 suited and things like that. And we should look more to 3-betting things like King-Jack suited and King-Queen suited and Ace-Jack suited. Just because those hands are going to be so far ahead of his calling range that we can start 3-betting them for value, as opposed to using some bluffs as a 3-bet, some really poorly playable hands as bluffs. We would just move to the wider for value parts of our range. So I think that's going to be the adjustment we make going forward. And if Jon wants to keep calling out of position with 9-4 suited, it's probably going to work out very well for us in the long term. We will open with the 2s on the right-hand side. I apologize for timing out at the Ace-5 top pair and a gut shot and an over. Obviously, our play in that spot would be to call. So I think we're down. I don't know if I have a cashier here. Your rebuy cannot be processed. I think we're down a little bit for this part of the video. Not too much. Maybe a buy-in. Maybe not quite even that. But I don't feel like there's too much really I would change. Maybe tightening up a little bit earlier. Some of the button opens we made, some of the steals we attempted to make were a little bit thin, given how often we were getting 3-bet and 4-bet. But we got there eventually. I think tightening our range, tightening, easy for me to say, up our steals. Jon 3-betting X3 rum here, winning a pot on the left-hand side with King-10 against the pocket 3s. I'm not really sure how Menager manages to get so much in with the 3s there, but he raised it. Jon bet the river and he raised, and Jon called the 2-pair. It's an optimistic bluff with the 3 and the 3. I think this guy's definitely here to gamble a little bit, perhaps. Probably the sort of player we want to have at our table. Unless, like I say, he's a PokerVIP member just trying to look to outplay Jon for the video. I really don't know, unfortunately. Right-hand side, we've got action between Djokovic and Casino Tornado, who calls a c-bet on the button. I believe this was 3-bet pre-flop by Djokovic. That is my assumption. It was, and he c-bets Jack 7-2, and he's going to carry on the Queen turn. Pretty interesting turn barrel. Hands that he's going to have for value, possibly Queen Jack, Jacks and Queens, Kings, Aces. But I doubt he's betting too many Jacks on the turn for value, so that he's going to have a decent number of barrels in his turn range there that pick up spades and things like that, and gut shots and straight draws. So if I was on the button there as Casino Tornado, I'm probably not folding any Jack. And obviously I have a lot of backdoor floats that improve on that turn as well that would be able to continue. Left-hand side are two of our mobile players rather going to war again, and Menager picks up the pot. Not too many opportunities for us to do anything, which is upsetting. As I said, this is the final part of the 4-part series here, so I wanted to go out with a bang. We're going to definitely open the 5s, or if Mousies opens, we will call. The only bad thing about calling here, of course, is Jon behind us can certainly put on the squeeze if we flatten open. We are going to try and isolate him here now, and just hope that Jon doesn't 3-bet once again. But he does. I mean, he's just 3-betting every single hand. I'm just wondering if we can 4-bet this all in and just get him to fold more often than not. I think that would be bordering on thin. I don't know whether Jon is trying to play or make some sort of 100% 3-bet video here for PokerVIP, but he's certainly going for it. Still think we're okay to open the Jack 10. I wouldn't mind taking a flop in position against Jon's 3-betting range. We do have a assumed recreational player in the big blind who's found out apparently you can upload your own avatars to TonyBet. So the features keep rolling in. I have to say, this is one of my favorite bits of software from some of the smaller sites. Djokovic has certainly been fairly aggressive as well, putting in a decent amount of 3-bets. Our hand is one that is easily dominated versus hands like Ace Queen, Ace King. Obviously, have got us crushed. We go multi-way. This guy's recreational. I think Djokovic will have to play pretty face-up against Casino Tornado. So I'm going to take a flop. Obviously, when we flop top pair on this sort of texture, it's going to be really hard for us to fold. I don't think we would want to fold. We will check, and most likely check call against Djokovic. As I said, I think he has to play really face-up with Casino Tornado in the pot. He's not going to be able to make too many wild bluffs with this player in the pot, who we assume is recreational, given he's not auto-reloading. He's here for €5. We turn very, very strong hand, but it's vulnerable to rivers like a jack and ace, a 9, a club. So we're going to bet pretty big on the turn. He can occasionally, Djokovic, wake up with ace-jack, but I don't think he ever has a flush. So we're just going to bet and most likely call off if he shoves. And I think he would still be capable of having some semi-bluffs, like pair and a draw on the turn that move all in. We end up winning the pot. Queen-jack isn't really a hand we want to defend versus an under-the-gun open. Once Casino Tornado comes along again, I think we will see a flop for the price. On the left-hand side, we made a really wide defend. It's a min-open from what we assume is a recreational player with a suited hand. Getting 4-1, I think we're okay to see a flop. We're just going to fold here. Casino Tornado leads. This is a really, really awkward one. I think we are going to float for half pot. It sucks to have Djokovic behind because anything reasonable he's going to raise to protect his equity. But we have a queen, a jack, a 9 as possible outs. So for half pot, I'm okay with the defense, even without a backdoor heart. Now we will just fold. A jack's a bit of a sketchy out, but it is going to be good some of the time, and I expect him to slow down if he has a 10. Casino Tornado actually reloads here now, so maybe he's not as recreational as we thought. Let's start with check on the left-hand side in a limped pot, and we will just fold. John has called the last 5 minutes in the chat as we hit 27 minutes on the video here. Not too much in the way of exciting action today. Certainly not. I think we really peaked at part 3, which was full of fun hands, jams, and hero calls, but part 4 has been a little bit slower for myself. We had the quads hand against John early on, where I really need to see this video and see if he managed to fold the ace. I don't think he will have. We also had the hand, we got it in with ace-king. I think that was pretty standard. John with the 9-4 suited. He straddles here. We're going to go for a raise. And again, I think this is a spot. We're winding down the video. He's in the straddle. There's a good chance we get played back at. Unfortunately, he does not play back at us. And we flop really, really badly against Menaja. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than this. Just going to have to fold. So this has been the story of the video, really. We've had some playable situations, but it's not really quite developed into anything exciting post-flop. And as I said, I think we should have adjusted a little bit earlier, tightening up some of our ranges versus 3-bets. But other than that, not too much to report, really. If you have any questions, comments, queries, as ever, feel free to fire them in the comment section here on PokerVIP if you're watching on the website or on YouTube. And I'll do my best to get back to them. It appears that John is winding down. We've nearly hit our 30-minute quota here, so we'll sit out our next big blind. I know that for those of you, I guess I shouldn't spoil if you haven't seen part 3 yet, but there was a fun hand right at the end of last session on part 3. So I would definitely recommend checking out part 3. It's a great video. Okay, I think that's going to conclude because we're not going to get a big blind here. We're going to get one last hand over on the left-hand side. So for the final part of our TonyBet series versus John, we will be dealt the 4-2 off. Under the gun, just a fold. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this series, and look forward to seeing you again in the future for more. Take care. I've been Spraggy for PokerVIP.